Hi guys, you're welcome back to my YouTube channel. Okay, so if this is your first time coming across my video, you're welcome. My name is Stella. All right, so let's proceed into what we have today. Okay, so today we're going to be drafting an armhole dart or a princess dart. Okay, so straight into the drafting process. Now, you can choose to use a single pattern paper, but I made mine on fold because I'll be using the pattern later. Okay, now, the first thing we'll do is to label. Okay, so I like to label my patterns. So we'll call that our center back and um or best let's call this our front, okay, and the other side our back. Okay, now how I got the block, the widest part of her body is her bust and her bust round is 43. So 43 inch divided by 2, that's 21.5. I went ahead to add 6 inches allowance to that. Okay. And that gave me 27.5. Now 27.5 divided by 2 is 13.75. So we have 13.75 in the front and 13.75 at the back. Okay. So I went ahead to divide the line into two using my straight ruler. So that's how we got the block. Now let's proceed. So the next thing we'll mark is her shoulder. Her shoulder measurement is 17, okay, and 17 divided by 2, that's 8.5. Now I'll go ahead and mark that, place my tape, okay, from my center front, and I'll make a mark, okay, on the 8.5. Um, Now the neck width for the front is 3 inches and the neck depth for the front is 3 inches as well. Okay, so to get yours, is not constant. To get yours, you simply do your bust round divided by 12. Whatever you get, that's your own standard measurement, okay? But in this case, I'm using 3 by 3. So for the back, I'm also using neck width of 3 inches, okay? And neck depth of 1. Now, I'll also mark her shoulder divided by 2, which is 17 divided by 2, and that's 8.5. So I have just marked that, okay? And I'm marking her neck depth of 1 inch. Okay, now I'll go ahead and use my ruler to connect these measurements. Okay, so I'll go ahead and connect my back neckline, okay, using my curved ruler. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is to slope the shoulder. Now, to slope the front shoulder, the standard measurement is 1.5 inches. Now, this applies to everyone. So I'll go ahead and mark that. Now, to slope your back shoulder is 1 inch, and that is a standard as well. So I'll go ahead and mark that. Then I'll use my straight ruler to connect these points. Okay, so I'll connect the back shoulder slope using my marker pen, and I'll also connect my front shoulder slope as well to the 1.5 inches that we marked. Okay, and that's it for the slanting of the shoulder. Now let's proceed to mark our vertical measurements for the front. Okay, so her bust point is 11.5. Now I'll make a mark there. Her under bust line is 15.5. I also make a mark there as well. Now the half length for the front that we're working with is 18 inches. So I'll make a mark there as well. Now I'll repeat the same measurement on the other side just so that I will be sure I'm working with a straight line. So I'm repeating my measurements, bust point of 11.5, sorry, her under bust line of 15.5 and her half length of 18. Now I'll go ahead and connect these points using a straight line. Okay, so I've connected them. Now I'll go ahead and label them. I like to label my pattern, guys. So that's my bust point line. Okay, I'll call that my BP. Okay, now the next one is my under bust line. I'll call that UB. Okay, now the last line there is my half length for the front. Okay, and that's it for the front. Now, let's move to the back. Okay, now your bust point and your under bust only applies to the front. We don't have a bust point at the back. So at the back, we're only marking our half length, and my half length for the back is 15.5. Okay, now your front length and your half and your back length is not the same, but in this case the difference is 2.5. So you need to measure yours and mark. Now I'll go ahead and measure my back half length, and remember I said her back half length is 15.5. Okay, so I'll make a mark there. I'll repeat the same measurement on the other side, okay, so that I'll be sure I'm working with a straight line. Now, and when I'm done, I'll connect it with a straight line, okay. Then I'll go ahead and label. And like I said earlier, I like to label my pattern so that it will be clear for me and for anyone that is looking at it. Okay, so I'll go ahead and label that line as my back half length. Okay, and then we'll proceed. Okay, so we've marked our vertical measurements. Now, the next thing we need to do is to mark our chest line. Okay, and to get that, we'll do her bust round divided by 6 plus 1.5, and her bust round is 43. So 43 divided by 6 plus 1.5 will give us 8.6. Okay, now we'll place this measurement on the back. Okay, so from the back shoulder slope, I'll place that measurement 8.6 and I'll make a mark there. Now I'll take my tape back to the starting point and add my 1 inch back shoulder slope, okay, to that 8.6, and that will give me 9.6. Okay, now I'll go ahead and mark this measurement across both the back and the front pattern, because I need the line to run across the back and the front block. Okay, so I'll mark that and I'll connect it with a straight line. Okay, and here we have it. Um, our chest line is ready. Now we'll go ahead and label that line. Okay, so I'll label it my chest line, CHL, okay, for the front, and CHL for the back as well. Okay, now let's proceed with our markings. So the next thing I'll do is to transfer my shoulder measurement. Remember I told you that her shoulder is 17 and 17 over 2 is 8.5. So I'll go ahead and mark that same 8.5 on the chest line for the front, and I'll repeat the same measurement on the back as well. Now I'm connecting that to the shoulder tip, okay, using a broken line, because eventually we don't make use of this line. Now on my back chest line, I'm also marking her shoulder divided by 2, which is 8.5. So I'll make a mark there, and I'll also use my straight ruler to connect that to my shoulder tip, okay, using a broken line. Now that's it. So let's proceed with our measurements. Okay, now on the back shoulders, on the back shoulder line, okay, you need to take the middle of that line. Now you take the middle and you just make a mark there, then you go inwards by 0.5 inch. Okay, now this takes care of your across back. So with this method you don't need to measure your across back anymore. All right, so now we're going to use a straight ruler to connect from our shoulder tip to that 0.5 midpoint that we just marked. Now let's also get to the front. Now for the front, we will go upwards from the chest line by 3 inches. Now this is a standard and it also takes care of your across front measurements. Okay, so you go up on your chest line by 3 inches, okay, and at that point you go inwards by 0.75. Okay, and we're going to be connecting that to the shoulder tip, okay, with a straight line. Now this will eliminate every form of puff or excess fabric just around your armhole. Okay, and here we have it. Now the next thing we're going to do is to mark our round measurements. Now her bust round is 43. Okay, so 43 divided by 4, that's 10.75. Now I'll go ahead and mark that on my chest line. Okay, so I'll mark my 10.75 on my chest line. Now we will move over to her waistline. Okay, okay, now her waist round is 37, and 37 divided by 4 is 9.25. Okay, so we're adding. Now I'll first go ahead and mark my 9.25. Okay, I'll make a mark there. Now we're adding a dart allowance of 1.5 inches. Okay, so I'll also mark that as well. Now I'll go ahead and connect these points with a straight line. So we're connecting her bust round and her waist round plus that allowance, okay, with a straight line. And I just did that. Okay, now let's move over to the back. Now before you mark anything on the back, you need to first tighten the back. And to tighten the back, you come in from the center back with 0.75. Okay, so and I'll mark my 0.75, okay, on the waistline of the back. Then I'll go ahead and connect that to the neck depth using a straight line. Okay, so I just connected the 0.75 to the neck depth, to the 1 inch neck depth at the back. Now I can now proceed to mark my bust round and my waist round. So we'll start with the bust round. Okay, now the whole essence of tightening the back before we mark our bust round is, you can see that gap. Okay, you can see that tiny gap. It looks little, but it's about 0.4, if not 0.5. Now, and you don't want your pattern to short, so I like to tighten my back before I mark my bust round so that we are sure we're working with exact. So I'll mark my bust round, and my bust round is 10.75. Okay, so I'll mark that on the back chest line, remember. Now we'll proceed to the waist. Her waist round is 37. Okay, and 37 divided by 4 is 9.25. So I'm placing my tape after that 0.75 mark. So I'll mark my 9.25 waist round, and I'm also adding 1.5 inches that allowance, okay, to that. Now I'll go ahead and connect my measurements using a straight line. So I'm connecting the bust round divided by 4 and my waist round plus the 1.5 inches that allowance. So I'll go ahead and connect that with a straight line. Okay, so and here we have it. Now let's proceed with our markings. So her bust span is 8.5, and we're going to be dividing that into 2. Now 8.5 divided by 2 is 4.25. Okay, so I'll be marking that on my bust point line. I'll also mark that on my underbust line, and I'll mark that on my waistline as well. Okay. Now I just placed my tape on my bust point line, okay, and I'm making a mark on the 4.25 measurement, which is her bust span. Now I'll go ahead and use a straight line to connect these points. Remember, we started marking her bust span on the bust point and not on the chest line, okay? So I just connected with a straight line. Now remember our that allowance of 1.5. So I'll go ahead and divide that into 2, and that will give me 0.75. So I'll mark 0.75 on each side of our bust span straight line. So I'll go ahead and connect my dart legs, okay, using a straight line. So that's it. Our dart for the front is ready. Okay, so let's go ahead and mark our dart for the back. Also, her bust span is 8.5, so half of that is 4.25. Now I'm placing my tape after the 0.75 back tightening that we just did. Okay, so and I just marked my 4.25 there. Okay, now from the chest line for the back, you need to come down by 1 inch. Okay, now this is to eliminate every form of sharp or pointy look at the back. Okay, so you come down from your chest line by 1 inch, and then you measure your dart. Now, to be sure you're working with a straight line, I like to take my tape back to the center back line. Then I'll measure to that 4.25 mark that I just did. I'll transfer whatever measurements I get there to the 1 inch that we just came down with from the chest line. Okay, then I'll go ahead and connect with a straight line. I just like to work with exact measurements. I don't like assuming anything. Okay, now I just connected that with a straight line. Remember our that allowance of 1.52 for the back. Okay, now I'll go ahead and divide that into 2. Okay, and that will give me 0.75. So I'll go ahead and mark my 0.75 on each side. Then I'll connect with a straight line. Okay, and here we have it. Our that for the back is ready. Now let's go back and finish up our armhole. So you simply go in with your curve and you rest it on the chest line for the back, okay? And you mark your curve. Now that's it. The back armhole is ready. Now for the front, you also come in with your curve as well. And then you make sure that it's resting on the chest line for the front, and you complete your curve. Okay, and that's it. Our armhole is ready for both the back block and the front block as well. Okay, so let's um let's move to the front. Now remember I told us that the difference between the front and the back half length is 2.5. Now you place your tape on the bust point line and you come down by 2.5 inches. Now you go in with a straight line and connect from your bust point line to that 2.5 mark that we just made, and that will be our bust dart. Okay, now I extended that line intentional, okay, so that when I close it, I won't have any shortage by the side. Okay, and that's it. Now this is our half scale block, okay, and it's ready. Okay, so we'll now proceed to our alteration to our armhole dart. Okay, now the first thing we need to do is to mark our underbust. Now her underbust measurement, her underbust round is 37 as well. Now 37 divided by 4, that's 9.25. Okay, so I'll come in with my tape from the center front line on the underbust line as well. So I'll go ahead and mark um my 3 inches, okay, because I want to use 0.5 to tighten that side. Okay, then I'll move my tape from there to continue my measurements. Remember her measurement is 9.25. Okay, so I just marked 3 inches and I'll move my tape to the other dart leg, to the second dart leg, okay, and I'll finish up my 9.25 measurements. Now this is a typical example of when your measurement is exactly on your line. Okay, so as you can see, her 9.25 is exactly on the line that we have there. Okay, so if this is your situation, you don't have to sweat. Okay, so I still went ahead to use my 0.5 to tighten that underbust, okay, from that side. Okay, so now the next thing I will do is to go ahead and write my 0.5, okay, that we used by the side, so that when it's time for us to add our allowances, I will remember. I like to write on my patterns because sometimes you may forget. So I just wrote down my 0.5 that I used, that I borrowed. Okay, so that when it's time, I will quickly add it when I'm adding my side seam allowance. Okay, so I'll go ahead and use my curve to connect. So we're starting from the center front. Now you need to avoid too much curve because you need a perfect finish when you're done. So you can watch how I'm placing my curve, just a slight curve, not too curvy. Okay, now you ensure that your curve for the center part, okay, ensure that your curve passes through the bust point area. Okay, now that's it for my center for that side. Okay, now we need to also draw out our curve for the second that leg. Okay, but before we do this, because I need the curve to pass through the armhole princess line. Okay, so I'll suspend the second curve for now, the second underbust tightening for now, and we proceed to draft our armhole dart. Okay, now to do that, we need to take our points. Okay, so the at the shoulder tip, I'll call that point 0. Okay, the very shoulder tip, I'll call that point 0. Then we'll come down by 2 inches and I'll call that point 1. Another 2 inches, I'll call that point 2. Another 2 inches, I'll call that point 3. Okay, now this applies to everyone. So now point 0 and 1, point 0, 1 and 2 is for people that have a light bust. That's people that their upper bust is not that full. They are the ones that can make use of those points. But for point 2.5 or 3, it's for people that have a full bust. And in this case, I'm working with a full bust. Okay, and I don't want to use point 3 because it's going to be very curvy and I don't want that. Now I came down by 1 inch, so that makes it 2.5. Okay, so I'm going to be working with point 2.5. Now I'm using a slight curve. It's not a straight line, it's not very curvy as well. So, and I'm going to connect from that 2.5 mark to the bust point line. Okay, just watch. I'm connecting that my line to the bust point line. Okay, I'll still come in with my marker pen to darken these lines for us to see clear. Okay, now from that point I will come down by 1.5 inches. Okay, now this applies to everyone as well. So from my 2.5 mark, or whichever is your own point, come down by 1.5 inches and you make a mark there. Now I'll also come in with my slight curve and connect to my bust point line like so. But in this case, I will extend that line outward. Okay, you need to extend your line outward like I'm doing. I'll tell us why. Okay, now we came down by 1.5 inches. So on that extended line, you also need to mark your 1.5 inches as well. So I just marked mine. Okay, now much later we'll come back and redraw our armhole. So you choose your point based on your bust round. Okay, and you come down by 1.5 inches. This is a standard. Now, and that's it. So we can now come in with our curve to tighten our underbust. Okay, okay, so now we can come in with our curved ruler to tighten our underbust. Okay, for the second side. Okay, now the reason why I suspended that earlier is because I want the curve, the line, to pass through that armhole dart. Okay, so that we can have a perfect curve at that side, and you can watch and see how I placed mine. Okay, now I like this curve because end of the day is going to give us a perfect um cup. Okay, without any form of pointy edge. Okay, and this is it. I'll still come in with my colored pen to darken that, but I like to leave it till I close my bust dart, because sometimes you close your bust dart, you find out that there may still be need to reshape your cup. Okay, but let me go ahead and darken the armhole princess lines. Okay, all right, and that's it. We are almost done, but not done yet. Okay, so let's get to the back and plot our princess dart for the back. Now remember our midpoint. Okay, okay, so you remember our midpoint on our armhole line. Now we're going to go in with a slight curve to connect to that 1 inch that we came down from the chest line. Now you need a slight curve so that that place will not end up looking a bit puffy. Okay, and that's not what we want. Now we need to extend that line outward by 0.5. Now if you don't do this and you're joining, you find out that it will short. So the 0.5 is going to fill in that gap. Okay, so that when you're joining it will be equal. Now we need to reshape our armhole. Okay, now to do that, you place your curve like so. Now your placement of curve has a definite method. Okay, it's not just a random thing. So you place your curve, making sure that it passes through that 1/2 inch extension that we just did at the mid armhole line. Okay, and that your curve is resting on the chest line. Okay, and now you're going to go ahead and mark your curve. Okay, I like to first mark with pencil so that it gives me room to still make my corrections if I don't like the outcome of the curve. Now, whenever I'm satisfied, I then come in with my marker pen to finish up my curve. Okay, now this is it for the curve. It shouldn't be too wide, okay, because that's not the kind of armhole you want. So this is it for the armhole for the back. Now that's it, we're almost done. Now the next thing we need to do is to tighten our neckline, okay, so that when your client wears it, it will sit well and the neckline will not gape. Now to do that, for the front neckline tightening, you come down by 0.5 inch, okay, and then we're connecting it back to the shoulder tip, okay. So I'll come in with my ruler and connect that 0.5 I just came down with to my shoulder tip. Now this is optional, but I like to always tighten my neckline so that it just sits perfect. It looks like a professional job, okay. um Now for the back, I will use 0.25 to tighten my neckline. Okay, so now we have a new neckline. So now we have a new shoulder slope for the front, okay, which is the new line we just marked. So for the back, we will use 0.25 to tighten our back neckline. This is also a standard and it applies to everyone. So I'll go ahead and use my straight line to connect my 0.25 neckline tightening back to the shoulder slope like so. So that's our new shoulder slope for the back as well. Okay, now one final thing that we need to do after tightening our neckline is for me to finish up my darts in the front. Okay, now to do that, I like to come out from that leg by 0.25, okay? Just, I don't like that sharp pointy look in the front. So from the original 0.75 darts leg, I'll come out by 0.25 on each side, okay? Then I'll go ahead and connect back my underbust tightening to that 0.25 like so, okay? Now I'll repeat that on the second dart leg. And that's it for the front. Now remember, we just used 0.25 on both sides, making it 0.5, and you don't need your pattern to be short, so I will go ahead and write that 0.5, okay, by the side. I'll just measure it out and make a mark there, okay. Now this will ensure that when you're done drafting your pattern, all your measurements are accurate, okay, nothing will be shorting at all. Okay, now you remember our 0.5 that we used to tighten the underbust. Now we have an opportunity to replace it. So we'll go ahead and mark our 0.5, okay, on the underbust line as well. So that when we close our bust that, we will reshape that side, okay, and factor in these extras, okay. And that's it for the darts, okay. So one final thing we need to do now is to reshape our armhole for the front, okay. Now remember our 1.5 extension, so you come in with your curve and you just connect it back, okay, to the chest line, to your bust round divided by 4. So just place your curve like so and just connect back. It's that simple, okay. And that's it guys, we're done. Yes, we are done. This is straightforward and this method applies to everyone, okay. So I went ahead to reshape, to color it. It's not reshaping, so I went ahead to color my measurements, okay. So, and that's it guys, our pattern is ready. This is your armhole dart or your princess dart, okay. So in my next video, I'm going to be altering this pattern to make an asymmetric neckline. All right, guys. Bye.